Hello and welcome back to another week of Sambo iRacing. We're back in the BMW M4 GT4, this time Mid-Ohio Sports Park for yet another track guide. If you're new to my channel, what we do is a hot lap and then a breakdown, and we're back in the cockpit one final time with the driving line on. Brake bias is shown on screen, and let me know if you have any other questions in the comments. Right, let's start the hot lap. Alright, let's start the hot lap. Come smashing down the tiny main straight just before the 100, brake up to about 35%, drop it down to fourth, get on the gas nice and early, exit nice and wide using that extra bit of track, and now we're going to be braking just after the 3, just before the 2 cone, and it's a corner where we really have to be patient, really trail off for quite a while before getting back on the gas in third gear. If you go too early, you're going to have an awful lot of wheel spin coming out of there, even with traction control on in this fixed setup. See, the brake bias is 58.8%. Again, we're looking at just before the 3 cone this time, down to third gear, clip that corner, back on the gas. Nice wide entry here as we go up the hill and over the crest. Smoothly back on with the gas, over to the left-hand side. Once we hit the dip, on the brakes, cut in the corner as best we can. We're going to go flat out through here, up to fourth gear. Very slippy corner. Hit this corner, and then we're trying to keep as much momentum as possible. Again, we're going to be careful with the gas as we go over that rise. Head back over to the right-hand side. On the few times we get up to fifth gear, down to fourth gear, back on the gas, hug it close to the right-hand side. A little harder braking again, leave it in third gear and smoothly back on the gas as we go through the final corner. Exit nice and wide, over and across the line in a 126.979. Right, let's do the breakdown. Right, we'll charge through the breakdown. So first braking marker is just before the 100 coming up on the right hand side. We brake up to about 45%. We're going to trail that off, drop it down to fourth gear, and I start getting back on the gas more or less just before we hit this yellow hump, this extra bit of corner here. Curving, should I say. So it's been a long day and it's a Monday. Ugh. Next braking marker is just after the 3 cone, just before the 2. And this time we're braking up to 90%. And as you can see, we get the majority of it done. Then when we get to the mid corner, we drop it right down, and now we're just holding a tiny bit of brake, not really to slow the car down, but just to keep that balance and keep the weight in the front tires so that they can dig into the ground and we can get around the corner. We're then gradually back on the gas and getting back up to 100% as we leave the curbing on exit. Don't go too early for this corner or you'll end up having to steer again. Right, for turn 4, we're going to brake just before the 4 cone. As you can see here, I've just started applying the brakes. So it's earlier than you think, and the reason why we want it to be earlier than we think is so that we can get the majority of the braking done before we start turning in, and we want to drop it down to third gear and really clip this entrance curb on turn 4 at the apex. That allows us to get on the gas really early and be able to take a nice wide entry into 5. Now you can carry more speed through turn 4 by braking later, but you're going to have a much tighter entry into turn 5 that we're just coming into now. So we're not braking overly hard, wanting to hug it round to the left hand side. Once we're at the top of this rise here, top of the crest, we're going to be gentle applying the gas, otherwise again you're just going to have wheel spin, the back end's just going to kick out. Brake again once we hit this little dip, and this time not overly hard, only up to about 45%. Trail it off down to the apex and we're getting back on the gas. Again, I only get up to 100% once the car's settled and I'm opening the steering again. We want a nice wide entry into 7, and that allows us to get up to fourth gear as we clip the curb on the apex, and it allows us to go flat over here, and we start lifting once we hit this next curbing on the inside for turn 8. And then once we straighten the wheel, that's when we can get on the brakes, sending it to about 60%. We're trying to carry as much momentum through here as possible. Drop it down to third gear. We're still trailing it off to the apex of 9. and then we get back on the gas, and we want to straighten that wheel before we hit up to 100%, because we're going over a crest here. There's not a lot of weight going through the wheels, and again, it's easy to lose the car. You'll see exactly what I mean if you've driven the few laps around here. Up to 5th gear, over to the right hand side. Try not to hit that wall on the right hand side like I did a few times. We go through the 200, and then we get on the brakes up to about 50%, drop it down to 4th. And again, this is a corner where your car's going to want to understeer out, so you're turning more than you think you should. We want to clip this inside curbing at turn 11 on the inside. Get back on the gas, hug it round to the right hand side, and then basically just after we lose sight of this curbing on the right hand side, be prepared to get on the brakes. So I brake up to about 60%, I then trail that off, and then I have to brake harder again because the corner just falls away from us the whole time. Still trailing it off, stay in 3rd gear, then we get back on the gas at the corner, and we're wanting to try and cut as much as that as possible. So now we're back on 100%, and we can just keep that through the final corner up to 4th gear and onto this tiny little straight again. Right, that was the breakdown. We have one final version coming up now with the driving line on. Without me speaking, enjoy.